Okay, so here I am just saying hello and want to welcome everybody to the webinar. I want to thank you so much for joining me, and I hope that the technology works out well today. This is my first time using Google Hangouts on air. I'm doing it through another program, so you might be watching directly through Google Hangouts. You might be watching directly through my website, and we'll just have to take it piece by piece, bit by bit, see how it works out. But I wanted to actually show you my face because apparently with this technology, you can't see me and see the presentation at the same time. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to see me, to see that I'm here, to be a real person for you. And yeah, so we're gonna get started. Give me 1 second and I will share the screen and we will start the presentation. Okay, you should see the screen now. You should see the presentation. And we'll get started. All right, so just in case you don't know, I'm Penina Taylor, and I'm so excited to be here with you today because I believe very strongly that the best way to get fulfillment in life is to provide real value to others and to make a difference in people's lives. And that's really why I'm giving this presentation today and why I'm doing it for free. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. All right, I'm not independently wealthy. And if I gave everything away for free, I'd be starving. So at the end of the teaching today, if you've gotten value from what I've shared with you, and if you want to know how to get more, I'll show you how to take the concepts that I'm sharing with you today to the next level. See, this class is really just a small part of an intensive all-day workshop that I give called Intentionally Me. It's a fully packed 8 hours of transformation. And by the way, if you want to present it, if you want to have it sponsor an Intentionally Me all-day workshop in your city, anywhere in the world, that's fine. I know in the United States it's popular to do it as an all-day program on a Sunday or over a weekend as a retreat or a Shabbaton if you're Jewish. And anyway, what I've done though is I've taken this 8-hour workshop and I've turned it into a 6-module, it's 12 parts, but it's 6 modules, a 6-module online course that I'm going to start giving live in a few days. Now, unlike other people who do 90-minute to 2-hour webinars, and then the last half is all about selling you an incredibly expensive program. I cannot tell you, I have been on webinars where they tried to sell me anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 programs, and I'm not doing that, okay? Today's teaching is going to be about 40 minutes of pure content because I want to help you. And I've got a gift for you if you stay with me until the end of the program, okay? So let's get started. Like I said, my name is Penina Taylor. And in case you don't know who I am, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a speaker, I'm an author, and I'm a life coach. And I not only do classes like this one and like my all-day transformational workshops, but I also do one-on-one coaching. You know, even with Skype though, and the ability to work with people all over the world, there's no way that I have enough time to work with everyone who wants to work with me. And that's why I decided to take this life-transforming information to the webinar platform. It's just the easiest and most efficient way to help the most amount of people. Like I told you before, I'm all about helping people. Now, if you've known me for a while, you know that I'm most well known for the story of my personal journey back to Judaism. But in addition to that, I also teach on reclaiming our lives from a difficult, traumatic, or abusive past. And if you've ever heard me speak, you know that I have an abusive past. And as part of that, I not only do life coaching, but I specifically help people to change the way they think, to change their lives, and to lose weight. You see, I've not only had a spiritual journey, but I've also had a weight loss journey. And somebody once said it's very brave of me to show these pictures to you. But it was really more of a transformation of the mind and the spirit. See, in 2004, I topped out at a whopping 365 pounds. 365 pounds. For those of you who do deal in kilos, I think it's like 170 kilos or something like that. I was in a wheelchair because of the strain on my knees. It was so great that I couldn't walk more than a few feet without being in excruciating pain. But see, the problem is that it wasn't just the weight. The weight was only a symptom of a much greater problem. And it wasn't until I got a hold of who I was telling myself I was and how that was informing everything that I did that I was able to drop the weight. This is me today. Now, there's more to the story, which I will get into another time, but this is me. Not only am I 210 pounds lighter in my body, yes, I've lost more than a person. I've lost a fat person, but I'm also lighter in my head and my heart and my spirit. So when I talk about changing the way you think, when we talk about taking our future out of the hands of our past, I'm right there. I know where you are. I've been there. Just to show you again, for those that just joined us, that was me at 365 pounds, and this is me today. Okay? So like I said, I've been there. I know where you are. Now, over the last 10 years, I have helped thousands of people do exactly that. And for 4 of those years, I was the women's head coach, trainer, and presenter for Rabbi Yom Tov Glazer's Possible You seminar. And now I'm doing my own workshops and classes, both online and in person all over the world. I really enjoy, and this is what it all boils down to. This is what it's really about for me. I enjoy seeing people grow and gain true satisfaction in life. Those who have come to me for relationship coaching have found healing for their marriages, and my weight loss coaching clients have literally lost thousands of pounds collectively. And I'm pretty proud of that, and I'm not ashamed to share it with you. Now, you'll notice that I tend to use the word transformation instead of change. And that's because change is something that you can do in a moment based on a snap decision. You can make changes, but they don't last. They aren't sustainable. Transformation, though, transformation is permanent. It lasts a lifetime, but it only happens as a result of inspiration or desperation. You have to have a reason for transformation to happen. Whether you're in a place of desperation or simply inspired to transform your life, right now, you're in the right place. Again, I want to just thank you for joining me. All right? Okay, so let's get started. Oh, you thought we already had, hadn't you? Okay, had you fooled. My entire life, I've had an insatiable desire to understand human nature and why people do what they do. I'm more of a philosopher than a therapist, but as part of my search for understanding why we do what we do and how we can change that, I discovered that there are only 2 reasons in life why we do anything. I'm serious, just 2 reasons in life why we do anything. Those 2 reasons are either love or fear. That's it. Everything else you can think of that motivates a person comes down to love or fear, or a combination of both. For example, certain survival behaviors are a combination of both. Love of one's own life and the fear that the situation may threaten that. The problem is the nature of fear. As we will see in just a minute, fear shuts down higher order thinking. It causes us to function purely on an animal level. Yeah, an animal level. And it clouds our vision of what's really happening. When we look at anything through the lens of fear, we can't know for sure if we're clearly seeing or perceiving reality, because we're perceiving fear's take on reality, which may in fact be something quite different. All right, so fear causes static in our connection to the source, which is God, however you understand God, okay? When we give in to fear, we lose our ability to tune in to not only reality, but to what God's doing in our lives. The best example I can give you is the story of the 12 spies that Moses sent in to assess the land of Israel. Do you remember the story? Remember from your Sunday school class, or, from reading in your Tanakh, right? At the end of the story, we get the full picture. The spies, well, 10 of them anyway, went into the expedition afraid. And their assessment of the situation was not only inaccurate, it resulted in the entire nation wandering in the desert for 40 years. I don't know about you, but I'm really not interested in wasting the next 40 years of my life wandering aimlessly. Still, and yet, many of us are doing exactly that. We're wandering around aimlessly because we allow fear to make our choices for us. You see, human beings have 5 basic human needs. Now, depending on who you listen to, sometimes there's 5, sometimes there's 6, sometimes they've got different, configurations depending on which guru you're listening to, because we all have to have our shtick, But this is the way I've broken it down. 5 basic human needs. And all of our fears fall into one of the 5 categories that answer those 5 basic human needs. For example, the top basic human need is love and connection. We are all driven to connect, right? Think about all of the behaviors that you do, all of the things that you do, all of the motivations that you have that come from a need to connect, to be loved, basically, is what that boils down to, be loved. All right. And if we're afraid that we aren't going to get love or connection in a situation, what do we call that? We call it fear of rejection, right? Fear of rejection is a fear that we're going to be rejected, that we're not going to get connection and love. If you're dressing a certain way that betrays your inner truth and stifles who you are, you might be doing it out of love, right? You might be making a choice to conform to community standards because you love your community and you've chosen to show your love through conformity. But you might be dressing that way because you're afraid that if you don't, you will be rejected and won't get the love and connection that you so desperately need. And really, quite frankly, we're created to seek, right? It's for another talk, but we are driven to connect because that's the way we were created. When God separated Adam and Eve, he caused us to spend our entire existence in this world trying to get back the unity that we lost at that moment. Now, you see the subtle difference in my explanation between the 2 different reasons why you might dress a certain way? On the one hand, both reasons look the same, but when we delve deeper, we can see that there's a huge difference in the frame of reference. And that difference will affect our ability to make informed, critical choices. It also will affect how we feel. With one experience, we feel love and the expansiveness that comes from choosing to love. And with the other experience, we experience fear-driven behavior, and we'll always feel like we don't belong, like we're disappearing. Now, the second most important basic human need is to create and to contribute. Man's search for significance. I know I have significance listed as a separate thing, but that creation and that creativity and contribution, that gives us a sense of significance. And if we are afraid that we are not meeting expectations, others' expectations, and our own expectations, that we're not adequately contributing, what do we call that fear? We call that fear of failure, right? Now, sometimes what looks like a fear of failure really falls back to a fear of rejection. right? If I don't perform to a certain level, I'm going to be rejected by you fill in the blank. Or I won't be important and won't be loved. Fear of rejection is about others. Fear of failure is about our own expectations of ourselves. And we usually have very high expectations of ourselves. And that often leads to something I call perfection paralysis. So in just a second, after I take a sip of my tea, I'm going to ask you a question. I suppose there's an advantage to the fact that I can't show you the slideshow and the video at the same time, because then you don't see me drinking my tea. But I feel like it's a little bit impersonal for the other course that I'm going to tell you about later that I'm giving. I'm going to be using a different platform. I used this one because there was a chance that we would have too many people to be able to utilize the other platform. But anyway, moving on. So let me ask you a question. Are your expectations for yourself causing you to fail? Why do you put off what you know you need to do, what you want to do? You have tasks that you need to do and that you know are crucial for you accomplishing the very things you want most in life. So why do you procrastinate? Why do you put them off or never do them at all? So now, there is actually a scientific reason why you do this. It doesn't get you off the hook, but it does explain a few things. And if you understand why, then you can understand how to overcome it, okay? So there's actually a scientific reason why you do this. You've got this task, whatever it is, right, that you've got to do. Either because you're an adult and, well, there are just some things you've got to do whether you like it or not. Or, I mean, you know, there are other tasks that you need to do, not because someone's holding a mountain over your head, but because you know that it's one of the necessary steps in accomplishing a goal that you very much want in your own life, right? You have goals, you have dreams, you have desires, and you know that there are certain things you need to do in order to get them done. You know that doing this step, whatever it is, which will lead to the completion of a bigger task and the fulfilling of a goal, is going to maybe bring you more money or more pleasure or more fulfillment in your life. So you really do want to do this. And yet you get this discussion going on in your head, like the old cartoon angel on one shoulder and devil on the other. You begin arguing with yourself, giving yourself reasons why not to do this task right now. And for some reason, God only knows, the devil always wins. You always, or at least more often than not, convince yourself that you can do it tomorrow, or when you're better equipped, or when it's quiet, or when it's daylight, or when you aren't as tired, or when. But the truth is that the argument that's going on isn't on your shoulders. It's actually in your head. It's an argument between different parts of your brain. It's something that happens between what's called the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. Now, before I get too scientific, there's a picture of your brain, all right? The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that not only is in charge of abstract thinking and thought analysis, it's also responsible for regulating behavior. This is the part of your brain that helps you choose between right and wrong. A properly functioning prefrontal cortex inhibits inappropriate behaviors. It allows us to plan ahead and to create strategies, and it helps focus thoughts, enabling us to pay attention, learn, concentrate on goals. This is the part of the brain associated with higher thinking. In fact, a poorly developed prefrontal cortex is often the explanation for why teenagers often do crazy things. And you wonder, like, where was your brain? Well, it was like not there, actually. All right, so the other part of your brain that's involved in this argument that's going on in your head is the limbic system. This is the part of your brain that is a more primitive part of your brain, and it regulates motivation, emotion, learning, memory, and fear. Included in the limbic system is something called the amygdala. Now, actually, sorry, not the amygdala, the amygdala. You know why I say that? Because it reminds me of Star Trek. The amygdala, okay? So the amygdala is responsible for fear or fear conditioning, or the associative learning process by which we learn to fear something, okay? This is the part of the brain that controls the fight or flight mechanism. It's the part of the brain that takes over when we're confronted with threatening stimulus. So, for example, if you're out camping in the forest and a big bear starts coming towards you, what do? Now, I actually have no idea since I've never seen a bear in person, but I have encountered, I don't know, a young child with chocolate spread all over their hands and face approaching me when I was wearing a dry clean only outfit. I think that the response in the amygdala might be similar. Of course, the first thing you do is you freeze, right? Your heart starts beating really fast and you break out in a cold sweat, and your prefrontal cortex, your decision maker, shuts down. Because let's face it, if you're out in the wild and you're approached by a very large, dangerous wild animal, the last thing you need is a voice in your head reminding you that you have a project due or at that moment. And what you don't need is higher level thinking. What you need is to focus on the immediate situation. What's going on around you? There's a big bear headed towards you. You aren't going to reason with it. You need to save yourself. You need to switch into survival mode. Survival mode is controlled by the amygdala. And in order for it to work, the prefrontal cortex has to be shut down. So you cannot go into survival mode and think logically at the same time. It can't happen. The same thing happens when we're confronted by a task that has within it the risk of failure. We have a situation, a deadline, or even a personal goal that we've voluntarily set for ourselves. But as soon as the prefrontal cortex begins to evaluate the situation, and even the remotest possibility of what we would deem failure arises, we start to experience an anxiety response to this threatening stimulus, which is the threat of failure, right? Because that's pretty scary. And all of whatever that means to us, and just like that big, scary grizzly bear, we're forced into survival mode. The prefrontal cortex shuts down, and the amygdala takes over, and we freeze or we run the other way. We're in survival mode. And the clear motivation in this situation is fear. That's it. It's fear. So let me ask you a question. What are you afraid of? You might be afraid that the task ahead of you is so huge that you don't know where to start. Or you might dread the displeasure of doing the task if it's something that is less than pleasant to do. Although often, even that less than pleasantness can boil down to fear, if you think about it. A fear, maybe not of failure, it may be a fear of pain and suffering, it may be a fear of loss of control, or it simply may boil down to a fear of failure. Sometimes there is the other fear of failure, what some call a fear of success, which is that you might be able to succeed once, but you won't be able to keep it up. And that would be an even worse failure than never accomplishing it in the first place. So if you're a perfectionist, you will use procrastination as a self-handicapping tool to avoid personal failure. If you have a project that needs to be completed by the end of the month, but you allow all sorts of other things to get in the way, you get to the bottom line, and it's like you can say it's not that you couldn't do the job, it's that life got in the way and you weren't able to give the project your full attention. By doing this or something similar, you mitigate the specter of personal failure, because let's face it, under those circumstances, no normal person could have been expected to do a good job. Therefore, you are simply falling into the level of expectations that any normal person would. It wouldn't be considered failure. Nobody could have been expected to get the job done properly, given what has happened in your life. This, by the way, could be one reason why you get sick. Have you ever noticed a pattern that you tend to get sick when you get overwhelmed, when you take on too much, when you're afraid that you're not going to be able to complete the project? You might attribute it to a compromised immune system, and you might even be a little bit more complex in saying that, the compromised immune system is from the stress. But the truth is, sometimes we get sick not because we're exposed to something our body just can't fight off. I mean, that happens sometimes, of course, but sometimes we get sick simply because we're overwhelmed, and our body and our brain understand, even if it's on a subconscious level, that by getting sick, we are forced to take downtime. And we certainly can't be held accountable for not getting something done if we were sick, right? Nobody would expect that. You spend a week in bed, how could you possibly be expected to meet that deadline that you were going to have trouble meeting anyway? I often teach this principle in my personal growth classes. That is, that in order to be as productive as you possibly can, this is extremely important. I think if you don't take away anything else from this class, please, please, please take a pen and paper, write this down. In order to be as productive as you possibly can, you must schedule a significant amount of downtime each day, each week, each month. And of course, when I'm speaking to busy entrepreneurs, and all the more so when these entrepreneurs are also wives and mommies, the response is always a resounding, "But I don't have time to schedule downtime." Well, I'm here to tell you that your brain and your body will get its downtime one way or another. If you don't choose downtime, if you don't choose when and how, your body's going to do it for you. And most likely at the least convenient time and in an inconvenient way. You choose, or your body will choose, but it's going to happen. Now, our brains are amazing things, the way they work to protect us, because that is really what we're wired to do. We're wired to survive. But that doesn't just mean physical survival. It also means emotional survival as well. Your emotions hold the key to your overall well-being. If you're in a healthy emotional state, you're usually, barring exceptional circumstances, okay, you can never make a complete blanket statement, but if you're in a healthy emotional state, you are usually in a healthy physical state as well. But your brain will do whatever it needs to protect you, both physically and emotionally. And I can testify to this in my own life. Let me tell you, the times that I have taken the time to care for myself, to schedule my downtime, to do things that bring me pleasure, right? I am healthy. And it's not that I have a good immune system. When I was a child growing up, I was sick every other thing. If you ask my mom, I missed so many days of school for being sick. Most of it legitimately sick, physically ill. In fact, I think it was 11th or 12th grade, I ended up failing driver's ed, not because I couldn't drive. Anybody who's driven with me, except my mother, don't ask my mother, but anybody else who's ever driven with me seems to think I'm a good driver. But I failed driver's ed because in order to pass driver's ed, you have to attend class a certain number of hours. There's a minimum number of classroom hours you have to have. And I had missed so much school that they couldn't pass me, even though I had, I think, a B+ average. They couldn't pass me because I had missed so many days of school. So I do not have a particularly hardy immune system. I catch everything from everybody, all right? However, since I've been doing this work and since I have gotten my head in the right place and learned to schedule that downtime that I need, I very rarely get sick. Very rarely. It's incredible. If I get sick once a year, it's a lot. But like I said, it's not because of my immune system. It's because of the work that I've done to get my head in the right place and to take the time to schedule the time that my body needs and my mind needs in order to be able to be healthy. Okay? So your brain will do whatever it needs to protect you, both physically and emotionally. Now, your prefrontal cortex knows that you that you are making a stupid decision, right? I can just imagine like the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, if you could only see me now, but I'm not going to show you because it would be crazy. Waving its arms, no, don't shut me down. Don't shut me down. Please, you need me, right? The prefrontal cortex knows that you're making a stupid decision and that failure doesn't actually mean anything when it comes to your self-worth or even your survival, right? You could say, yeah, sure, I know. But the amygdala is about a subconscious response. So how can we overcome this perfection paralysis if we have this primal, ancient, subconscious brain making decisions on our behalf? Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge that it isn't our conscious self that's making the decisions to do what we need to do. That we have this reactive, primal subconscious brain whose only goal is to protect us, calling the shots because we're too scared to do it ourselves. Okay, that's really, really important to understand. When you start to get that feeling of panic in your chest or the butterflies in your stomach, to understand that that is your amygdala taking over, okay? And it's going to call the shots because it needs to protect you. So what are we going to do? What can we do? Well, the first thing that we have to do if we want to be productive, and by the way, at the end of the end of the class, if you sign up tonight, I will send you a worksheet, a PDF with this chart. Otherwise, if you're not signing up, that's okay. Take notes. It's good. Take notes. But the first thing we must do if we want to be productive and to avoid the paralysis that comes from the fear that we will not meet a certain standard, usually our own self-imposed standards, is to get rid of expectations. Now, I'm not saying not to do our best. Obviously, you always want to do your best, but we've got to learn to stop being so afraid of not doing things perfectly that we don't do them at all. You see, the consequences of this is not only a lack of fulfillment and satisfaction and well-being in life, but honestly, we're robbing the world of the gift of ourselves. I once heard a brilliant quote that I thought was just so beautiful. So beautiful. I cannot give all that the world needs, but the world needs all that I can give. I'll say it again. I cannot give all that the world needs, but the world needs all that I can give. When you allow your expectations to stop you from doing the things that you need to do, you are robbing the world of the gift of you. And we need you. We need the gift of you in the world. And by waiting until you can do whatever it is perfectly, you rob the world of whatever you can give, however imperfectly that may be. My saying is good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you are a perfectionist and you are really resonating with what I'm saying, I want to give you a little piece of homework. Take a piece of paper or do this on the computer, whatever. Print up a sign that says, good enough is good enough. Good enough is good enough. I once heard a millionaire give a lecture. And when he was asked his most important piece of advice, you know what he said? He said, don't be afraid to be awkward. Things may not go as you hoped, but they may go better than you hoped too. And you'll never know unless you do it. Good enough is good enough. That leads me to point 2. Choose. In order to avoid perfection paralysis, you first have to make the conscious decision that you are not going to coast through life on autopilot. You have to decide that you are in charge of your destiny, recognizing that God gave you the gift of being able to choose. It's very convenient, and I know somebody's going to strike me down as being a heretic for saying this. It's very convenient and very easy for us to shift into the mode of learned helplessness, that everything is out of our control. It often disguises itself in piety, right? God is in control of everything. Well, he is, but not that way. It sounds very righteous. God's in control of everything, very righteous. But in reality, it can simply be a painless way of avoiding having to make difficult choices. If I have no control and nothing is up to me, then even if I fail, it's not really me failing because I had no choice. It was beyond my control. And yet we know, if we really think about it, that we were given the gift of free will for a reason. God created us in order to have a relationship with us, right? And a relationship requires both parties choosing to love. If we had no choice but to obey, that would not be love, which is why God gave Adam and Eve the option of disobedience in the Garden of Eden, and why he gives you the option of what you are going to do every day. God created you with the ability to choose. Created in the image of God, you are powerful, not powerless. You have the ability to create reality, to create a life through your words and also through your thoughts. In the secular world, there's a concept called the law of attraction. A lot of religious people poo-poo the idea that what you think of, what you focus on, you get more of. But the truth is, the Bible gave us this concept long before the secular world gave it a name. It says in the book of Proverbs, chapter 23, verse 7, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. You have the ability to create who you are and to some degree, the life that you live. You may not always be able to choose what comes your way, but you can choose what you do with it. And also remember one other thing here. Your thoughts inform how you feel. Yes, feeling can be affected, if not controlled, by mindfulness and intentionality. There are some things that inform your thoughts, but when you take charge of some of your thoughts, which ones you'll give space to and focus on, you can affect how you feel. You may not feel like doing something, but 9 times out of 10, that's really a cover-up for this flight response to a threatening stimulus. Making a conscious choice to do something and dwelling on the reasons why you want it, it's an important part, why you want it, can influence how you feel about doing it. Usually, even if you can't move it from the I'm dreading it column to the I really love doing this column, you can at least move it to the I want to get this done and out of the way because it's important to do column. Once you've made the choice to take control and do what you need to do, you've got to have a plan. Having no plan leads to feelings of overwhelm. First, you have to have the why, because if you don't have your why, W-H-Y, why, right? If you don't have your reason for doing it, then all the plans in the world are just going to be garbage. They're not only not going to accomplish anything, but they'll actually add to your feelings of overwhelm. So you have to first have your why. Why do I need to do this? And then you have a plan. And because being overwhelmed is one of the fastest ways to trigger the amygdala threat response and shut down the prefrontal cortex. Whereas when you have a plan and the task is broken down into small pieces, you can look at each individual piece as a small attainable goal, and it doesn't trigger the threat response. So, how do you plan? You do not hear me taking a sip of my tea. Plan I use as an acronym for the steps in planning. So P is purpose. The first step is to create the goal and explain why you have the goal. There's your why, right? Why do I need to do this? What is the purpose of having this goal? I'll give you an example. I know that we're running out of time and I'll try to be a little bit quick with it. But for example, my family, my husband and I are currently in the process of downsizing. We are making the conscious decision to get rid of stuff, to move into a smaller space and to live more simply, which may sound impossible for an Orthodox Jewish family that regularly hosts dozens of people. However, I'm going to, God willing, be doing a series of videos documenting this process. If you haven't seen it already, I have a series of videos. You can go to my YouTube channel or you can look on Facebook called the Unstuff Yourself Challenge. And I've been we're on day 21 now of 30-day challenge to not only unclutter the physical life, our physical things in our home, but also to unclutter our mind and to make space emotionally and mentally to be able to receive blessing, right? So it could be a very overwhelming process to get rid of half of what you own if you don't understand why. So if there's no why, then even if you have all of the little steps written out, it could still be a problem for you because it would be overwhelming. So the P is the purpose. The purpose, you have to know why. So you write out the word plan, you write P equals purpose, and then you write a paragraph or a couple of sentences explaining why this goal is so important. And in fact, before we embarked on this, I sat down and I wrote out why this is important, what benefits it's going to bring me, what goals it's going to help me accomplish, all right? So first step is to create the goal and explain why you have this goal. What is the purpose of this goal? L stands for look. What would success mean for this goal? What is the end goal? What does success look like? So in the example of downsizing to a smaller apartment, basically getting rid of half of what I own, well, how do I know if I've been successful in accomplishing this goal? Well, first of all, the end goal I won't know for sure until I move in would be that I can find a place for everything in this smaller house, but also that I feel lighter. Now that's a very intangible, result. And you try to keep your results tangible because they're easier to assess. But what does success look like for this goal? Okay, it could be that I'm able to put away money, but then I would have to write out, okay, why? Why is that related? A stands for assess, and there are two different things you have to assess. First thing is ideas. How do I get from here to there? Brainstorm about available resources, resources that need acquiring, and possible outcomes. So for example, when I am writing out how I'm going to downsize to a house that's a quarter the size, 3/4 the size of the one that I'm in now, all right, so I know that there are certain organizational things that I'm going to need to do in order to be able to live in a space that's small. Some of those things I already have, certain boxes and shelving and stuff like that, but some things I need more of, right? So how do I get from here to there? So that might involve going on a trip to IKEA, but there might be previous steps. Like, for example, first I'm going to have to save some money so that I can go to IKEA, so I can buy what I need in order to be able to have a place for everything, so that everything can be in its place and I can live successfully in a smaller environment. All right. So the second thing that you're going to need to assess is structure. How do I make it happen? And here's where you plan it out. So I'm going to find this many clients so that I can save this much money, so that I can go to IKEA by this date and purchase these items. And this item's going here and this item's going there. Okay. So the assessment is how do I get there? What does that look like? What do I need to acquire? What do I already have? How am I going to make it happen? This is where you plan it out. All right. And next, N is next. Now you decide what the very next action is that you need to do to make forward progress towards this purpose. Sometimes it's helpful to do a ladder. You can make your starting point the bottom of the ladder or the top of the ladder. It doesn't matter. But each rung of the ladder is the steps that I need until I get to the top of the ladder, or the bottom of the ladder, which is the next action step that I need to do in order to make forward progress towards this purpose. That item gets written out on the bottom of your plan. My next, for example, if I need to get more clients so that I can get more money, so that I can purchase the items that I need in order to organize my house. So how am I going to get more clients? That's going to be a whole other action plan all by itself, right? The first step might be simply to advertise my business. Okay. So next, what is the next step? That is the thing that you're going to plaster on your computer in front of your desk. This is the thing that I need to be working towards. And then you've broken it down into just one basic accomplishable step. Okay. Now that was plan. That was number 3. Number 4, what can we do? Number 4 is schedule time. If you don't already use either an online calendar or a physical calendar, such as a day timer, you have to get one immediately. Your brain, and you can look this up on TED Talks. There are TED Talks about this, right? Your brain, I think the guy who talks about this is David Allen. Your brain was made for creating and problem solving. It's quick, like a powerful computer, but it doesn't have that much storage space, right? It's like you have a really, really fast RAM and you have really powerful processor and all of that stuff, but you don't have a very big hard drive, okay? Not given the amount of information that we face today, right? We face a tremendous amount of information today. So the more you try to keep track of in your head, the more easily you're going to get into overwhelm, and the more quickly your threat response is going to be triggered. Don't keep anything in your head. Put it all down on paper or on the computer, but put everything, every event in your calendar and schedule your day. If you've got to be flexible, because that's the kind of person you are, schedule times during the day for flexibility and spontaneity, but schedule downtime. Remember, I mentioned it before. And also schedule your uptime. That is, block off a certain amount of time each day, 1 hour, 3 hours, 6 hours, if this is your primary work time, and only look at the goals and the tasks in your plan during that time. The rest of the time, don't. When the book is closed, so to speak, it's closed. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have it open all the time so that you can plan for what's coming up next. But when you're not scheduled for a task, don't give that task any attention. Number 5, rid yourself of distractions. This is one of my hardest things to do. When it's time to work, make sure that you've scheduled work time when you have space to actually work. If you have children at home, hire a mother's helper for that scheduled time. Ask your mother to babysit. Or if you don't have anyone at home, make sure that other distractions are disabled. I have Facebook because it's necessary for my business, and there's always the temptation to just check my messages while I'm working on the computer. So I recently installed a program on my computer that disables Facebook during the designated times that I tell it to. This way, it's not even possible for me to be distracted by it. I shut down my email program and I turn off the internet on my phone. Now, if you're asking me, how can you be so disciplined? Well, because I have my why. Remember, I said you've got to work out your why. Why am I doing this? If you have your why, then you're going to do it. You're going to have a reason, a motivation, inspiration. So my unwritten rule is that during this time, only important phone calls from people I know get answered. Now, someone once said something to me that was so simple. It was brilliant in its simplicity. You don't have to answer the phone. No one ever said that you have to answer the phone. I know everyone expects it, but the truth is that unless it's likely to be urgent, don't answer it. My phone message says that if it's urgent, send me a text message. That way I know that unless I get a text, I don't have to answer the phone. Also, make sure that you plan your uptime for after a meal. I know that if I'm hungry, I get much more easily distracted, and I will sometimes use the need to eat as a distraction from doing the things that I need to do. So I make sure that I'm not hungry and I've got my cup of tea or coffee ready with me. All my distractions are shut off when I sit down. Number 6, we're almost done. We have one more point. Number 6, visualize. Now, I'm not talking about woo-woo stuff, woo-woo. No. Research has shown that if you visualize the process, the task becomes easier to do. This is because our brains cannot distinguish between what we think about and what we actually experience. So if, when beginning a task, you visualize yourself doing the task, or visualize the completed task and what that looks and feels like, your brain is tricked into thinking that you've done it before, which helps to lower the feelings of fear and overwhelm that can begin to creep up. It sounds strange, but I promise you it works. I guarantee it works. In short, any task you've done before is easier to do. So visualize the task. And last, by God's sake, just do it. I know Nike said it first, but just do it. The truth is that this is really part of the first step. Once you've made the choice and planned the time, just grit your teeth and do it. If you're a writer and you've got writer's block, this has actually been proven. Just sit down and write anything during the time that you're supposed to be working on that article or blog post. In the end, you'll actually find stuff that you can use, and it might just unblock you. As you can see, it is almost 8 o'clock. We have just run out of time. There is really so much more I'd like to share with you. That's why I've taken my full day Intentionally Me workshop and I've turned it into a 12-part, 6-hour online training that you can either take live or watch the videos, okay? Or watch the videos at your convenience. And as a way of saying thank you for signing up with me tonight, everybody who signs up right now will get the course for half price. All right. Now, I'm not a salesperson. I told you that at the beginning. All right. I just want to help people. All right. But I'm giving this. So I'm giving this away just today, just for people who attended this webinar. All right. You've got 24 hours. If you're watching it on recording, you've got 24 hours, half price. All right. But it's only available at that price for the next 24 hours. After that, it goes up to the regular price of $360, which is still an amazing price for 6 hours of instruction. If you have watched any webinars that they try to sell you stuff, you know, most stuff is like 3 installments of $360 or more. But I'm giving it to you for only $179. And on top of that, I'm offering a free live coaching call as well for everybody who signs up tonight in the next 24 hours, and a free PDF of the workbook that goes with the course. Normally that costs $36, but I'm including it in this package. The total value of the gifts I'm giving you tonight is over $500. But that's it. I'm not a salesperson. Like I said, I just want to help people. And I've seen how much this program has helped others. So I want to make it available to as many people as possible. And that's why I'm offering it to you. So if you're interested in taking the leap and really transforming your life forever, click on the button on the right side of this page. If you're watching in Google Hangouts, I think what you do is you hover your cursor over the top left corner. Hang on a second. I'm actually going to turn off. Okay, you've got the URL at the bottom here, but it's not an active link. I did post the active link in the Q&A in the question area for if you're watching this through my website. Let's see, is this going to allow me to post it here? I don't think so. Okay, so if you click on what looks like the yellow tickets, you click on the little tic-tac-toe thing at the top, and then you're going to see the option for clicking on Showcase. You click on Showcase, and what should come up is something that says Intentionally Me, and it should be a live link in order to be able to click on that. If you are watching through my website, I think you can purchase it in the button on the right side. But go ahead and click on that and enroll in the course. I really, really am hoping to give away a tremendous amount of value in this course. Like I said, I'm going to be doing live half-hour trainings twice a week for the next 6 weeks. Due to the Jewish holidays, there may be a little bit of, maybe 1 or 2 classes that will be postponed by a week. But in addition, you'll be able to get the recordings so you can watch them at any time at your convenience. And they will be available for rewatching for some time afterwards. Anyway, so yeah, so I want to thank you. Hang on a second. Let's stop so that you can actually, hello, there I am. I think you can see me now. So I want to just thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for being here with me. I just really, really appreciate it. And I am, like I said, as a thank you, I'm offering all of these things, this value, and it will give you 6 hours, 12 modules or classes, and a free live call working with me. And the process is just so amazing. You'll be absolutely astounded at the end results. So again, thank you so much for joining me. And if you email me at penina@peninataylor.com, I will be happy to send you a PDF of the 7 steps to avoiding perfection paralysis, along with the plan worksheet. And I'll be happy to send that to you. Please click on the link below or down there, and I'll see you on the Intentionally Me program. Thank you for joining me.